In this video, I'm going to show you how I made the helmet as well as the neck brace for my Albedo cosplay. As always, if you want to follow along, you can get the patterns on my Etsy store, just click the link below. Following with the pattern, I cut the red lines at a 45-degree angle. That way it slants inward when I put it together. This third long piece is straight cuts, no slanting. You're also going to slant these two eyepieces on the red lines at a 45-degree angle. To mirror the pattern to the other side, I beveled everything just like I did but in the opposite direction. You can see here I'm transferring the notches from one side to the neck so that I have a guide when I flip the foam over. Then it's just rinse and repeat the exact same process I did on the right side, I'm doing on the left side. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned this from the beginning, but please don't use hot glue, please use contact cement. Now that I had the left and the right pieces, all I had to do was stick them together down the center line. I'm just using my heat gun here to shape it and make it more flexible. Now I'm making the top middle part of the helmet. It's pretty straightforward, just follow the letter guides and it should look something like this. Once I had the shape, I used my X-Acto knife to cut V-grooves into the inside of the tabs and then fold it inward onto itself to create the corners. Then I just glue it together. And this is me gluing it together. Then I attached the front piece to the front of the helmet and the back piece to the back of the helmet. To fill the resulting gaps, I roughed out the general shape of the openings onto some foam and glued it on to close it all up. I finished the helmet off by gluing on the side panels. The center fronts are beveled on both sides to give that sharp seam right down the middle. Then it was just freeballing from here. For the neck brace thing, I had to account for the thickness of the helmet or else it would be too tight. I made my half duct tape pattern with the helmet on and traced the shape as best as I could. And I'm a complete idiot because it was until after I cut the pattern out and cleaned it up from the saran wrap that I realized I had left out the entire bottom piece. So I had to go back and add that in. So once that entire ordeal was over, I traced the lines where my neck intersected my shoulders and under my chin. This is important if you don't want it to look like a straight tube. I then added an inch of breathing room so I don't die, cut out all three pieces on 12mm foam, and I beveled the seams at a 45-degree angle so that it slopes outward at the shoulders and chin. For the opposite side, I just flipped the pattern to mirror it. I also cut the shape of the top of the neck brace into the helmet so that it kind of rests nicely. Now we continue with the struggle by beveling the front and back center edges to get that sharp seam down the middle, just like how we did it with the helmet. Once I finish everything off, it's time to paint and add the little details. I just do a flat solid purple with the silver accent on top. Then I make these fake rivets out of hot glue. Once they were dried, I painted them, and to attach them to the neck brace, I had to actually sand off some of the paint because it wouldn't stick to the paint. I'm using hot glue because what other glue is better to stick hot glue with other than hot glue? I'm using some dark blue around the rivets. This will give it some nice depth and some wear and tear. I primed the helmet with some Flex Bond tinted with some black acrylic paint. I'm using Deco Art metallic paints in the color Amethyst, and I give the helmet a couple coats of this. Add some highlights and shadows and the base helmet is done. Now it's time to move on to the horns. Once I cut out all the pieces onto some 8mm foam, I sanded all the seams at like a 45-degree angle so that they slope inward. Then I just put it all together using contact cement. I followed the letter guides and it's pretty straightforward. Don't worry, you don't have to be too neat with it. You can always fix things afterwards by sanding it smooth. If you followed everything so far, it should look something like this. Any imperfections, you could just sand the shit out of it. No one will even know. To make the grooves, I didn't know what to use. At first, I ended up just using this random bit that came with my Dremel. In hindsight, it would be easier to use a soldering iron, but if you don't have that, even just an X-Acto knife and some sandpaper to really dig in and amplify the grooves, that will work too. Just be careful not to dig too deep because you might end up making a hole in it. Then I blasted it with a silver base coat. Then I went in with my airbrush and painted all the contour lines black, followed by a dark black pass in between all the grooves. Then to finish it off, I highlighted all the edges with bright silver to give it that extra pop. So I didn't know what this was, and I honestly still don't know what it is, but I had to like freehand it because the reference image wasn't very clear. This is what I think it would look like in 3D. I'm not sure. This is the best attempt. I drew some like geometric guides to kind of help me, but I just carved and sculpted what I think the general shape was. To attach the horns to the helmet, I heated up some wobbler into the shape of a peg. Then I poked some holes into the horns and the helmet. I passed the peg through the helmet and secured it to the back with some hot glue. Now you could permanently attach it to the helmet with some glue, but I added some velcro so I can take it on and off. It's just easier for storage because I can put the horns inside the helmet so it doesn't take up as much space. Finally, to block out my eyes, I got this sheer fabric off of Amazon. I just roughly cut it out, then glued it to the inside of the helmet. Make sure to cut off any excess and you are done! As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you do end up making this cosplay, please tag me in your pictures on social media. I need to see.